What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me is my two great co-hosts, Ralph Hannah and Fede Perez. And guys, here we are. It is June. It is already the first episode of the month. Obviously, a new month and a big month for Paraguayan football here at Guarani Vision, because obviously all the attention will be given on it. I don't know if you could see on my screen the Ave Roja. I don't have the away one yet as of yet, the new one. But obviously all the attention will be given to them this month because of them participating in the Copa America here in the United States. We'll talk about obviously that, the friendlies that will come into mind, the squads, everything that Danny Ganero will have to make in what is a crucial month for La Ave Roja. But before we get into that, we obviously have to talk about how the Apertura ended. We do have a champion. It is Libertad for the third straight time. For some of us, it is a right prediction from the start of the season. For some of us, it's a wrong prediction. But still, as Ralph and I had alluded to last week, it was always going to be filled with drama, and we saw that. We definitely saw that. So let's go straight into it, Ralph. I want to go to you first because we had this discussion last week. It was Cerro Porteño that was in the driver's seat right this time last week. Exactly last week, they were in the driver's seat with 2 games to go. They had 2 games against Deportivo Luqueño and Nacional. Libertad had to play General Caballero of Juan León Marroquín and Olimpia, who obviously were going into the situation with nothing to really lose. And Cerro blew it. We'll go to what we saw on the weekend because we saw, obviously, Libertad do their job against General Caballero de Juan León Marroquín. But it was Cerro Porteño who messed it up against Luqueño, a 2-0 loss to them. And ultimately, we'll go into order of how this all transpired, but I do want to introduce to you. If you're a Cerro fan, I'd imagine that you're just happy that this Apertura is over and just waiting to see what players like Gabriel Aguayo and Fabrizio Peralta can do on the national team, because I think it's been a rough week for Cerro fans having to deal with the Copa Libertadores elimination and, of course, them losing the Apertura.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, Roberto. Hi, Fede. Hi, everybody. It was a surprise result, but then maybe it wasn't a surprise for some people that have suffered with Cerro for so long, right? That Sportivo Luqueño game. We saw once again Julio Cesar Cáceres. We talked about him being the coach. He's done very well in the past against Cerro, and once again he set up his Luqueño team to really shock the Azulgrana and take that. It was what was an early lead right in that game. And well, I mean, for Cerro, it must have just been such a big, what's the word, like kind of a big shock after coming from the Colo Colo game where they didn't qualify and then going down through that first half and just feeling like everything's starting to go against us as we're fighting for this title. And that was the key game as we're talking about the Luqueño game, because we knew that if Cerro could win both games, they would have been champion. And by losing the first of the 2, it put them in that back seat going into the final match. But I think, looking back now, it seems so long ago now, the Luqueño game, with so much that has happened. But I thought what was really kind of disappointing, I suppose, was more the senior players. Where were they trying to find that when they go 1-0 down, not 2-0? Even at 2-0, then it starts getting out of hand. But when that first goal went in, where's the kind of reaction? Where was that way just of trying to find a way back into the match any way they could? And they didn't seem to have some of that spark. And then we even saw at halftime going into with Manolo always doing this. I think he brings in someone like Morel, who's actually quite defensive, because he had this idea of, okay, actually I'm going to probably end up throwing everything forward up front. And so Morel will become a central defender, which he does do eventually, I think around 60 minutes. And they end the game with about 5 strikers. But even with all those players in the team, they never seemed like scoring. It was very similar, I thought, to the Colo Colo game in that sense, whereby they just didn't, towards the end of the game, they just didn't seem like they were going to break it down. The more the game went on, almost like the worse they got, because sometimes Cerro's, I guess, like surprise factor with people like Aguayo and Cecilio from the beginning, that kind of wears out over time as you learn how to defend against them. And so that was the nail in the coffin, as we can see, because even though Cerro won their final game against Nacional, it didn't mean anything because they'd lost. key one to Luqueño, and they're celebrating, well, not celebrating, but they're now receiving their fifth second place in a row, which is historic. No team in Paraguay has ever finished second 5 times in a row, and so it's just they're just missing that spark to be a champion.
Five straight vice championships, Fede, for Cerro Porteño. 3 straight titles for Libertad. We'll go into what we saw on the final day because obviously it was a circumstance where Cerro had to depend on their rivals, their bitter rivals, to help Libertad, to help them win the championship. You know, there were some rumors of Olimpia playing a lesser squad, and it was a battle for Libertad, actually. At one point, you know, it looked as if, though, Cerro were doing their part. I mean, they eventually got the win against Nacional on the final day. They beat them 2-0. But Olimpia Libertad, it was still a tight affair, even with a goal called offside. But ultimately, Libertad won 3-1. They are back as champions again, even if barely had escaped it this time. It wasn't the runaway championship that we've been accustomed to from Libertad, Fede, but still, 3 straight titles. This is the best team in Paraguay, and ultimately so, even from our predictions. Who can stop them? You have to be really good to stop them to win a league title.
They really look unbeatable lately. Roberto Ralph, hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. Libertad has really owned Paraguayan football lately, and I think I've said it in several shows that I work for. They're sitting on the crown. Nobody's taking it away from them lately. They look like the king lately. You know, when you have a team, I think we had that Olimpia also that won 4 straight with Carnero. That looked like an unbeatable team. That was probably the last one we had here in the Paraguayan League. And well, everybody knows what happened with Olimpia after that, the Marcos Trovato episode, and they still can't get themselves together after that situation. And then you have Cerro Porteño, who's been probably the only team behind them, and that's why they have so many second spots now accumulated. And Libertad has really gained strength, I would even say, not only gained titles, but they look like the strongest team, that they know exactly what they're doing, that they have the biggest budget. And if you talk about Libertad, you have to talk, and you can't leave out of the conversation somebody like Horacio Cardes. I mean, just how important his role has been in this club. I mean, there's somebody that's just been getting powerful and more powerful over the years, and Libertad has kind of grown with him also. And they're even selling players to Europe now. That's even taking it a step further. You know, you're seeing that every year they try to go for a next goal. Besides what everybody else is doing, besides that Cerro Porteño is trying to build a good team, besides Olimpia trying to get themselves back together, Libertad is doing their thing. Even with very old players like Roque Santa Cruz, I did not expect him to play as much as he did this season. But look at him in a huge game against Olimpia and winning another championship against his old team. And then you had Alex Silva also coming in. So there's a lot of storylines behind what Libertad has done over these last couple of years, not to just be strong as a team, be strong as a club themselves, but also take away from the other teams. You know, though they took their best players, they usually win the biggest games, and they got their comeback because it was really a tremendous meltdown from Cerro Porteño, a choke up, I would even say. I don't know how to call this that I've seen from Cerro Porteño. I mean, after I saw that tournament a couple of years ago where Cerro took it away from Guarani in that last game, that was probably a huge game, one of the biggest games that I can remember over these last couple of years in the Paraguayan football. But that Luqueño against Cerro, taking it from them in Cerro Porteño's ground also, and seeing a team that was just hurting so bad. Ralph was saying, you know, the emotional factor behind it after what happened with this team against Colo Colo, you could see that this team was still hurting from that, and they could not show up. This team did not show up in the big games. They had a good run, but they were not enough. They weren't strong enough in a game against Luqueño. And then there was a lot of things said after the game. You know, a lot of money being running around, that players, that Luqueño players were going to get a lot of money after the game. They were able to win against Cerro Porteño. There's always talks about big games like that, and when you have teams that have the title on the line. And then you saw Luqueño losing by 6 goals on the last game. So I don't know, Roberto. It's Paraguayan football for you just the way you like it. Maybe you don't like it. I kind of love it, especially when it ends up this way. Everything on the line until the last minute, everything on the line until the last game. It was kind of fun, even though it wasn't probably the best football. I don't think we're coming out with a tremendous champion, with a team that really outplayed everybody. I kind of like Libertad. I kind of like Garnero's Libertad more, the team last year. But hey, they have a couple of young players that kind of came through in those last games that I think are very interesting. And looking forward, Libertad has plenty to kind of even keep that crown that they have.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's you can't understand it. That's really the one way to really describe Paraguayan football. You just can't understand it because certainly there's always sort of drama, and like Ralph had alluded to last week, it was going to happen. Fortunately, Cedro was the on the receiving end of that, and Libertad ended up winning the championship. So yeah, I mean, look, it's very hard to really stop a team when they're at the top, and we've seen that in various leagues around the world when teams are so dominant that they've won league titles, and you have to be on your very best, if not perfect, to beat them. So, I mean, I wanted to close off the discussion real quick, but before we get into it, obviously the Clausura doesn't start for at least another month and a half. Obviously, I think you're still gonna find the same favorites as always. I don't think this league, at least in the Apertura, for my sake, we've seen a team that feels like maybe they can surprise someone. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. But just looking ahead, man, I mean, look, obviously it was very close. It wasn't Libertad running away with the title we've been accustomed to for quite some time. And I want to go to Fede on this one. Do you feel that heading into the close? I'm not saying like make a prediction as of yet. We still got time. There could be teams that could lose players, could gain players, all that kind of stuff. But do you feel as if though what we saw, especially the way that Cedro has been playing under Manolo, and we would hope that he would stay as the manager this time around in a couple of months. But do you feel as if though with such a close race that we saw that it can paint a picture of like maybe we can see something similar? Because like you said, even Olympia had their dynasties cut in short by other teams. The Libertad are 3 straight, so I don't know if they can do a fourth straight, but still. But do you feel as if though what we saw, it can paint a picture of like maybe it won't be as close. Sorry, maybe it could go the other way, or maybe we'll see a similar close race as we saw in this time around.
Yeah, you're asking me now if Cerro Porteño is going to be able to do it next time around. And after seeing this situation happen, I don't know, Roberto. I mean, it's going to be really hard for Cerro Porteño. They're going to have to let go of a couple of players that were really criticized in these big games, and players are going to have to bounce back. Even I don't even know what they're going to do with their stars. Cecilio Dominguez, that needs to sign a new contract. If not, if not, they're going to have to let him go. He's going to have offers on the table because he was one of the best players in the league. Also, I think he was top scorer even at the end of the league. So that's the player you're gonna have to keep because he was your best player. And moving forward, you have to bring in players that can really show up in big games like they needed. Players that can absorb the pressure that's going to be under this team now in the Clausura and moving forward. They need to be champions. They also have the Sudamericana. Let's not forget about that. So they're going to have the double competition again. There's Copa Paraguay in the middle. Cerro's going to have plenty of games. But as of right now, I see Libertad moving forward as a stronger team. It's kind of weird, though, right? I mean, neither Cerro or Olimpia were able to achieve their goals in this season, but they're going to maintain their coaches. They're going to maintain Manolo and Cerro Porteño. They're even thinking about a preseason in Spain, which is something that we haven't seen in a long time. Playing a couple of friendlies there, and also something we haven't seen from Olympia in a long time because there is going to be, like you said, almost a month and a half, I think, between each tournament. Olympia is going to have a couple of friendlies also in Argentina against pretty big teams, good teams. It's going to be nice to see them over there, especially because we know there's a whole bunch of Paraguayans that want to see their team play in Argentina. Also, it's going to be nice, but they're keeping Palermo, and he didn't end, I believe, the best way either. So you're going to have both of them, I think, having big tests in those first games next season in the Clausura, and if they don't pass those tests, I think one of them was going to have to go quick. And then you're going to have Libertad probably on the same run, doing the same thing as always. And I'm hoping that another team can catch up, Roberto. I really like what I saw from Dos de Mayo, for instance. So I don't know, maybe Sportivo Luqueño, if they keep Julio Cáceres, can do a couple of things better. If they play like they did against Cerro Porteño the whole tournament, they can really be a championship team. So I kind of like other teams, even though they weren't able to be in the title talk, right? I do think there were other teams that really played well in certain parts of the season, Rob. You got to give certain props to other teams also, even though Libertad took it away again.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to mention is Libertad's 48 points that they got this time around, and they also did 48 in the Clausura. That's actually the lowest totals we've had like since the pandemic. So, because in the pandemic we had like the short titles, but since we went back to 22 games, Garnero was always getting like 50 plus points. Even Cerro, I think, got 49 or 50 when they won the title against Guarani. So it isn't like, even though they keep winning, it's not that they're running away and destroying everybody, as we were just talking about. That's why it's keeping it close. But looking at the two big teams, from Olimpia, I really don't see much. I mean, okay, Derlis is back now, Richard Ortiz is back, but is that going to be the difference maker for them? I still don't think they ever figured out their team. Palermo never really got the right balance of his side. Cerro maybe are in a better place, but as Fede mentioned, they're probably going to lose some players. We really don't know. Cecilio ended the season saying that he wasn't happy with the supporters, and so he's not in a great place to renew his contract right now. When your top scorer is saying that Churin with age isn't aging like Oscar Cardoso and Roque Santa Cruz. We didn't mention Tacuara, by the way. His free kick, which essentially sewed up the league title. What a great free kick coming off the bench to do that. And those are these players that Libertad have that just have this quality, and it doesn't seem to be, their quality doesn't seem to be dropping with age, right? Whereas Cerro are still trying to find some kind of long-term players that they can use like that. And then for the other teams, I mean, the one I just mentioned is Guarani, because you should never count out Chiquiase, right? He hasn't really done much with this Guarani team, but if he's going to stay as coach, then you never know what might happen, right? With Guarani, they could bring in some young players, they could make a surprise. But it does really seem all point again towards that Libertad are going to be the ones to beat. And especially because of the people we just mentioned, like Roque and Cardoso, they just have this quality that is above anything else. Melgarejo's another one as well. They have that like European quality, and obviously they're not at a level to play in Europe anymore because of their age, but it's just another step, I think, from a lot of the other players you're seeing in Paraguay. So it's going to be Libertad's to lose, I'm pretty sure.
And now we get to put a bow tie into the Apertura. We'll be putting aside all the league action, obviously happening in Paraguay for quite some time, because we're going straight into the national team. We're going straight into the Aviroja, because all this month, and for the majority of the summer here in the United States, we will be talking about Paraguay, as we obviously talk about the first friendly of 2024. Hard to believe. It should have been the one against Russia, but something did happen. So it is the first friendly against Peru today. I would expect it to happen, and if we don't see like any issues happening in about the next 11 hours or so at the time of recording. But the first game is against Peru over there in Lima, before traveling to Santiago de Chile to take on Chile. And 5 days later, finishing off against Panama in Panama City, before their first game 8 days later against Colombia in the Copa America in Houston. But before we go into some of these games and what we'll see on the pitch, we have to see who's made the list. Because remember, Danny Garnero gave a list for these friendlies specifically. It is not a provisional list, and it's not even a final Copa America squad that a lot of these teams have already done in the competition. So looking into the goalkeepers, we have Carlos Coronel, Alfredo Aguilar, and Rodrigo Monidigo, a Libertad kid, 25 years old, making his first call-up. In the defense, we have Gustavo Gomez, Junior Alonso, Fabián Balbuena, Omar Alderete, Matias Espinosa, Ivan Ramirez, Nestor Jimenez, another Libertad player, and Gustavo Velázquez of News Old Boys. Looking at the midfield, Miguel Almirón, Richard Sanchez, Matias Villasanti, Cacu Romero Gamarra, Matias Rojas, Andrés Cubas, Ernesto Caballero, Damián Bobadilla, and Patricio Peralta of Cerro Porteño. And in the attack, Derlis Gonzalez, Angel Romero, Julio Enciso, Ramon Sosa, Alan Barreiro, and the two new guys, Gabriel Aguayo and Alex Arce. So right off the top, and I want to go to Ralph on this one first, right off the top, no Diego Gomez. No Diego Gomez for these friendlies. You know, there had been some fears that because of the injury that he suffered just a couple of months ago that he wouldn't have made it to the Copa America. It's still not confirmed because Danny Garnedo said in his press conference that they were still waiting to see if he's really fit for the competition in time. But I just think with this team, just already planning ahead and and looking at the evolution that Diego has made, he hasn't played a single game yet for Inter Miami since his injury before the start. You would think that it's kind of going to be the case of Diego Gomez, that he's not going to play the Copa America, but he could play the Olympics. So at least there is a silver lining in this one, but still it's a big loss for that midfield heading into not just these friendlies, but obviously for the Copa as well.
Yeah, it's a big loss because he brings something that maybe some of these midfielders can't do, which is almost some of the box to box or being slightly more attacking, but having the ability to press high. So it looks like they'll probably end up playing Villasanti and Cubas. Cubas is much better at like sitting deep, but he's not really going to go up the pitch and start making a difference. And Villasanti has done some higher pressing in the past, but again, it's not his natural fit. So I think they do miss something with not having Diego Gomez in there. But otherwise, I mean, Paraguay. I don't know, the kind of feeling I got from this squad is the further up the pitch you go, the more exciting it starts to look. But then they've had such problems scoring goals, so let's hope that we finally find that kind of difference maker in terms of scoring goals. And then when you go back, it starts to look more nervy, right? Especially in the fullback area, the goalkeeper. I don't think we're not really 100% sure who our best goalkeeper is. So you have two. If you look at your three goalkeepers, two are from the local league. So I don't know. Although we're missing Diego Gomez, is I'm still thinking, okay, more towards the further forward we go, we seem to have bigger stars, and as we go further back, we start to think, how are we going to stop? I'm already thinking Copa America. How are we going to stop Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica are starting to look good under Alfaro. So there's a lot of work to be done, I think, in the defensive unit, and we might see against Peru like some new players getting a chance, especially at fullback.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are friendly. These aren't exactly the way of saying like this is the squad that we're going to get, because obviously looking at the rumors of a possible lineup, I've been seeing like two different ones. That's how we know we're already into the game already. But we're looking at a lineup that's probably going to be looking like this: Coronel in goal, Gustavo Velasquez, Fabián Balbuena, Omar Alderete, and Junior Alonso. So no Gustavo Gomez to start off the first friendly of the year. No Gustavo Gomez. Then you look at the midfield, and there's still some question marks about who will start. Andre Cubas, Matias Villasanti, and Matias Rojas will look to start in that midfield. But it's the attack that's still with a bit of a question mark. I'm seeing already rumors that it's going to be either Julio Enciso or Miguel Mirón starting alongside Alex Arce, who's had a wonderful year at Liga de Quito right now. He's been scoring at an incredible form. Would be his first ever game for Paraguay and his first ever start. So this could be a situation for him to be the starting striker, at least make a claim, like Rob said. But if someone has to score goals, at least have him do it. But still, this isn't the set squad for this friendly. And I think Garnedo needs to understand that with these friendlies, you have to go with what you have at the minute. And it is the first one of the whole year. So he's already missed 2 months of an actual plan where he can look back at a game and say, okay, I like how this worked. I don't like how this worked. No, he's going with a lot of these plays for the first time in a long time. Remember, the last time that Paraguay played was in November. 7 months later, here's their first ever game since then. So I think now this is the case where they need to impress very well against Peru. They haven't beaten Peru in a long time, but they need to impress, at least even if this isn't the set squad for the Copa America.
Yeah, I do think Garnedo has probably 80% of his 11 right now, in his head, and what he's seen so far out of the games that he's managed. But we haven't seen this team in action since, I don't know what it was, October of last year. So it's been
November against Colombia.
November. So it's been a very long time, and it wasn't a good game against Colombia either. But we did see some bright points in the sense of Alderete coming in through in defense. I do think that's a player that kind of has impressed Garnedo, and that's a player that he likes. It's a player that we don't see often, or we don't mention him as much, but he's been playing regularly in Spain. So he's coming in with with the right attitude, always with the national team. I love what he brings, and he's going to be alongside eventually with Gustavo Gomez. He's missing this game because we couldn't play against Russia. That was the game that he was going to miss. He got a red card last game around, so he can't be in this game. And there was a couple of players that were cut off from the list, from this initial list, that can't make the trip to Peru. So out of that situation, I think it's Ivan Ramirez, even Matias Espinosa. They're coming off the party with Libertad after they won the title. So it's a good opportunity to try out some other players, because I do think they are our starting right back and left back as of right now, just because of what Garnero knows out of these players, and how well he knows them, and the way that he wants to play also. But Rap just mentioned, we're going to have to face Brazil. We're going to have to play against Colombia. So why not try out Gustavo Velasquez in a game like this? Why not try out if Junior Alonso can be the right player? He has the experience. Maybe he can be that player. I'm not convinced with Junior Alonso. I'm never convinced with him playing as a left back, but it is what Garnero brought to this team. I would have liked another left back to be brought into the list. I thought Arzamendia had an opportunity. I thought Cantero from Guarani, a very young player, could have had his call also. So there are players that I don't like that much out of this list, but we're gonna have to wait on to see the final list he's gonna take to the Copa America. Props to Morinigo, the goalkeeper. I do think he really deserved it. I mean, he fit right in Libertad, and not a lot of people had him on the radar, and he fit the shoes. I mean, it wasn't easy when Martin Silva was brought off injured, and he took over, and he was a star in this team also. So props to him. I think he's gonna come into the list, and he's never gonna come out, Roberto. If he starts playing in Libertad, it looks like the final, like we finally have a goalkeeper for the future. And the starting nine, it's gonna be for Alex Arce. You have to use this player right now. He's on a hot streak. He's scoring in every game he plays. Put him on the national team. This is the only player that I wanted to see on the list, and I'm even happier that on this first game, Garnero's gonna put him on the starting nine, because that's a weak spot right now. We need a starting nine. It can also be Alan Barreiro, who's in rumors that he's gonna move from San Lorenzo to another big team, but he's also on the squad. I do think he's gonna get his chance. But the player that's missing in this team is Miguel Almiron. What's going on with Almiron? What's going on with Miggy? Why is he leaving Miggy out of the team? Matias Rojas is really in a better shape right now than Miggy Almiron, who's been playing pretty much all season, also in Newcastle. This is a shock to me. But hey, Garnero, he's been testing out players. He's been seeing what everybody's made out of, and maybe he has made up his mind.
Yeah, and looking at some of the players that are also not on the squad overall, Ralph, obviously no Antonio Sanabria. Obviously, he was the one that scored the last goal that Paraguay has scored in a game. It was the game against Bolivia. He's not on the squad. Also, some of the names that we had mentioned even beforehand, Cecilio Dominguez, top goal scorer of the Apertura. He's not there. Delis Gonzalez is back, actually, after quite some time out of the national team. Obviously, a player that Danny Garnero knows from his time at Olimpia. Also looking at some of the other ones, no Gabriel Avalos, but a space for Gabriel Aguayo. So from one Gabriel to another, and it rightly so. I think he had a wonderful season for Cerro Porteño. He's obviously kind of bursted onto the scene, maybe kind of fell off after those call-offs. Maybe the pressure got into him a bit, but it's happy to see him play. And, obviously there were some rumors about whether or not a player like Jesus Medina, no Ivan Leizamón, no Brian Ojeda, a lot of these players that were also back in the squad for the Russia game. So like Roberto Rojas, Robert Fernandez, and many others. So this is an interesting way of Garnero looking at his team real quick. And again, I think obviously we'll have to wait and see what we see on the pitch. It's going to be exciting to see Julio Enciso and Ramon Sosa together, because they are kind of the two young sparks. But again, no space for Miguel Almiron, and also no space for Caco Romero, a player who has always been so good at his club. He just won the AFC Champions League with Al Ain, so he's coming off a champion heading into this squad. One of the few players that has won a title coming from Paraguay, but no space for him, not even in the starting lineup either. So it's interesting to see that we kind of have a quote for quote embarrassment of riches in the attack. but how are they all going to fit in at one? That's always the sacrifice that Guerrero has to make when making these starting lineups.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like, how do you fit this team together, and do you try and build it around one player that can make a difference, like, for example, Caco Romero, or do you try and stick to what you like, and then sometimes you can't find a place for somebody like him? In the Almiron situation, it's interesting, right? Because you get the feeling that he's seeing Almiron competing with Ramon Sosa. I'm getting that feeling. He's not thinking of Almiron playing in the middle. And so suddenly it's like, well, really, Sosa's playing better. Julio Enciso's going to be on the other side. So there isn't a place for Almiron if he's going to play wide. It's that middle spot with Mati Rojas, which is quite interesting, that would be, I think, occupied by Diego Gomez. And he's gone for Rojas instead of somebody like Kaku, who I think could have done a great job there, because we see that every time Kaku's on the pitch, they seem to score more goals, or they create more chances. But we know that defensively, he maybe doesn't offer the same. Now that Rojas is playing with Tata Martino, which obviously has that very kind of intense style, and there's a lot of pressing, and there's a lot of running and movement, and actually Rojas or a lot has been running for Messi because Messi's not doing as much running. Maybe that's what's convinced him to give him the tryout here, because if we're honest, Mati Rojas has been in the team before and he hasn't really done anything special with the Paraguay national team. So it's not like this is like we're trying him out for the first time. It's maybe more we're seeing, will he fit now in this new system, as we're talking about, like how Garnero's trying to fit some of all of these attacking players. Also with Julio Enciso, right? It looks like he wants to play Enciso on the left, where he started out with Libertad. So when Garnero was giving him his debut, he doesn't want to play him down the middle because he'll have Arce there, and he doesn't want to play him just behind. Unless there's what you could see is you could see Enciso and Matias Rojas switch, right? So you could end up with Matias Rojas over on the left, and Enciso kind of fits in more as like the number 10. But I don't think we'll see that. From what I'm getting, I think we'll just see your two best players at the moment, Julio Enciso and Ramon Sosa, as your wide players, and they're going to be the ones that can cause all the kind of difference for Paraguay.
Yeah, I hope they can stay healthy during the whole tournament, right? I mean, that's also going to be so important. I mean, that's something that's always on my mind every time we have 2-3 important games, one right after the other. We never have the starting 11, the opportunity to repeat the team. And that's something that Garnero, I think, is going to have to work on, player ability, and just have them available for every game, especially for the group stage, because you're going to need a team. You're going to have to build the team now in these friendlies. Hopefully the results are good in these friendlies, so you come out with the starting team and you don't head into that first game of the Copa America after these 3 friendlies with many doubts and maybe putting in a whole different team from the ones that we're going to see in these friendlies. Hopefully that's not the situation. Hopefully it goes on well and we head into this first game of the Copa America with the team that we're going to see most likely against Peru, or in the second game, I would even say that we're going to see the starting team for the Copa America. And obviously, I'm going to put my support on Julio Enciso, Ramon Sosa. I want to see their best version, but are they really ready for it? That's my question. That's the question right now, Roberto, heading in the Copa America. Are they ready for how heavy this jersey is right now? I mean, it's not easy to put the Roja on, and these players have looked kind of anxious even. And I would put Almiron on that line also. Not being able to handle the pressure, everything that's on the line, and then when you don't get the results, that's when you start doubting yourselves, and that's when we haven't been mentally strong in those games, or even being able to come back in games when we're down. That's where I want to see the attitude. That's where I want to see the right mindset heading into the Copa America, into the competition, and moving forward. This team needs to be better, not only on the pitch, but as a team as a whole, Roberto. And I want to see that already on the friendlies.
Well, the same thing can be said for Alex Arce. If it's his first ever game for Paraguay and he's going to start and he's the striker, imagine how much pressure that comes, Ralph, at seeing Paraguay strikers over the years. They're big shoes to fill, especially from a team that hasn't scored a lot of goals in quite some time. So you're looking at someone who's obviously putting great numbers at Liga de Quito, And now everyone's saying, okay, now do it for the national team, which is, is normal. So yeah, I understand that. And look, I think heading into these friendlies, in a way, it kind of is a good way because one, you get some teams that are similar in the way that they play in the South American qualifiers, obviously Colombia and Brazil being the two with Peru and Chile. Those teams are also the ones you're kind of fighting for those spots to go to the World Cup. And then Panama, you have your equivalent with Costa Rica. So you have that to the extent. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Ralph, I think ultimately we want to see a Paraguay squad that is competitive. And hey, if they can win it, they have to. I mean, they haven't beaten Peru in a long time. I think the last time was 2013, 2012, around that time. So it's been a while. It's been a while that they've done it. Then they have to go take on a Chile side against the manager that they hadn't beaten even when he was Peru manager, Ricardo Gareca, and then finish it off against Panama, which respectively they've always had good records against Panama. So there is that kind of reassurance on that end. But yeah, I think looking at these friendlies, not only do they have to perform well and yeah, they get the win, but I think we need to find a set style where they're not tossing and turning and changing a lot of the teams, but at least finding a squad. And, for a lot of these players who understand this opportunity, that this is their Copa America chance, not even just to get on the squad, but also to play and be a starting member. I think that's something that has to go on their minds as well.
Yeah, and just taking the game against Peru, which is the one now, it's Peru in a similar situation, right? Fossati's just taken over. This is his third game, I think. He had two friendlies before, won them both. And so they're in a similar position, as in they're trying to just work things out ahead of the qualifiers. They had an awful qualifiers up until now. So they're using this game and then the Copa America, I think, to kind of experiment, which is also what Paraguay is doing. I think what Paraguay is looking to do is get this at least 6 games, because the 3 group games and these 3 friendlies, to really be ready for the qualifiers. I feel that's where they're going with this. It's not necessarily, sure, if you can get through the group in Copa America and do something, that's great, but it's more about what you were saying, building this style of play and this team. Because it's funny that really Paraguay haven't had a distinctive style of play since Berizzo. The problem about Berizzo was the style of play nobody liked because it was too defensive, but you knew what you were going to get. When Barros Schelotto came in, because he was very pragmatic and the football was often very direct, it looked a bit disjointed. They never seemed to be really, okay, we never looked and sat there and said, okay, I can see what they're trying to do in this period. It just changed and it wasn't the same. And I think with Garnero it's been the same so far. But in those 4 games, in those qualifiers, we never felt like, oh, okay, we can see what he wants to do is transmitting onto the pitch. So that's one of the biggest things we'll want to see from these. I take the 6 games, including the Copa America, but definitely the friendlies, right, where there is no pressure on results. So it's more about getting it right. And it's also the time, I suppose, the responsibility of some of those players, like you were talking about Almiron, that are now 30, I think, right? Almiron's hit 30 now. You have to be the senior player to now help that happen on the pitch. You have the experience to do that. You're no longer like the young up and coming star that could do something. You're actually the senior player. So I think there's a bit of pressure there as well, which previously that's all fallen on Gustavo Gomez, I feel. So now it's like maybe time for other people to help out in that kind of leadership of the team.
Yeah, I have my questions, on certain players are also on this list and on which role they're gonna really have on this team in certain games, like Fabricio Peralta, Ernesto Caballero, Richard Sanchez. I mean, where are you gonna fit them eventually in the midfield? I mean, they're totally different in the style with the ones that you're gonna start. If we do start like we've been playing under Garnero with Cubas and Villasanti in the midfield, right? I mean, eventually you're gonna have to give them some rest in a certain game, so he's gonna have to mix it up in the midfield also, which is something interesting. And the experienced players, they're gonna have to know when to show up. If Derlis Gonzalez makes the cut, if he's gonna be in the Copa America, which Derlis Gonzalez are we gonna see? Because he hasn't been able to play 90 minutes for Olympia yet. So, but he can give you 20 good minutes. He can give you 15 good minutes at the end of a game, and he can make that difference also. Just like Angel Romero. I mean, these are players that have already been through it. I think they're going to kind of show the way also. That's why I believe Garnero's also calling them. He doesn't want just a young squad, but he does kind of wants the balance of it. and he's seen some players breaking through. Alex Arce is another name that has been breaking through. So I'm happy that he's calling these young players like Aguayo also. I mean, no, I'm not waiting on Aguayo to see if he can end up the year or maybe wait for the qualifiers. Let's call him now. Let's have him with the team already because he wants those players to feel part of the national team. I think that's awesome. I think that's good because it goes with what I was talking about, making the group stronger also, Roberto. And I want to see those links. I want to see Ramon Sosa and Enciso being friends. I want to see them making, the celebrations in the Copa America. I want to see this group getting stronger and stronger and getting better together. We haven't seen much of these players coming together on the national team. There's a lot of young blood, and I want to see them be brothers out there.
Yeah, I think that's something that I want as well. I mean, Ralph, just to close it off real quick, I mean, what's the one thing that you feel you want to see from this squad for these friendlies at least? And then, yeah, obviously we'll go into the Copa when we have to, but at least for these friendlies, take it as it is. Could depend a lot on how you feel friendlies are, depending on like your mindset of it. But yeah, just the one thing that you feel you want to see from this squad and from Dani Garnero as a whole as well.
I want to see goals. I want to see goals because if you think of Garnero when he was at his peak in Olympia, they were winning games sometimes like 5-2 or 6-3. He was conceding goals, but he was scoring lots of goals. And we just talked about the weakness of this defense. So this can't be a team that you build around your defense. We've got to look to start scoring goals, and we're not going to win many games 1-0, and that's fine. Let's win them 2-1. So that's really what I want to see. And it goes back to, I think, what Fede was just talking about of Sosa and Ciso. They're going to be your key guys. And maybe Alex Arce. Alex Arce is a player that's questioned every time. All he does is score goals, but each time he's been questioned because it's in Emiliano. It's in Rivadavia. Oh, it's only the Ecuadorian league. Well, at one point, now he's reached, the very top. And so let's see if that continues, and let's hope it does. Because, yeah, I want lots of goals. That's what I want.
How special would it be for Alex Arce to score on his debut? I mean, think about that. How big would that be? I think
it'd be huge just thinking about other players and their debuts that haven't done it recently, right? So I think that would be great. Well, I remember Robert Morales when he scored on his debut in Ciudad del Este. That's maybe that last time we got excited about a striker, and then unfortunately got injured in that same, like not even the same game, the same action of scoring.
Yeah, like minutes afterwards.
And it's never been the same. Yeah.
We might even see him coming back to the National League because he did really bad this time around in Toluca. I think they're looking for another striker, and they're going to give him out on a loan.
Yeah, and look, well, we can obviously hope that Arce doesn't follow the same footsteps, and I personally don't see it because I think he's been on a better streak than what Morales was at Cerro. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I'm excited. I'm sure both of you guys are excited to see what happens tonight and in the next two games, as we obviously cover everything that's going on in the Paraguay national team here at Guarani Vision as we gear up to the Copa America, the Olympics as well, coming very soon. Guys, we got those friendlies coming up, and then obviously the whole tournament as a whole. We'll see who makes the squad if it comes from players that are already on this team going into the final squad for the Olympics in France. So yeah, obviously going to be exciting times here. We'll have a lot of preview action as well, heading into the Copa America as well. So really looking forward to that as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.